喂喂喂，Hello Hello， 今天好像可能会着重讲那白皮书的事情。 还有个7分钟。上个厕所先，待会儿又是1个小时。过年好，过年好。
为流通而做的。
好像还开着原神，我操！我说怎么感觉有点还好吧。本来今天请了天假参加他们那个比赛，正好下午也没啥事儿，直播一会儿吧。测试一下，感觉好像，没看这个冬奥会开幕式，还想着在网上看看，没找到。测试一下这个声音有没有。OK， 我上去。等一会儿吧，应该快了。哈哈，你问我 IPO 消息，我还想问他们呢。IPO 不知道，这个知道的话，他们应该也不会说的。这都属于商业机密了。 但我觉得，个人觉得，今年希望应该挺大的。差不多应该开了吧，快。还没入职呢，我大概2周后差不多。这波人咋还不开始？再等一会儿吧，等官方开，官方还没开会议。哎呀，开始了，开始了。这是个谁啊 ？Jordan， 看着像是个新面孔。嗯，窗口上。
All right, everybody, welcome to our February AMA, our first one of 2022. We have a few folks who are still joining us here last minute on our side, so bear with me while I get them brought in. If I can find Bram in the list, he hasn't joined yet. Okay, never mind, I won't go find him. We have a new face with us this month. We'll let him introduce himself here in just a second. As always, with most of our AMAs, if you have a question you would like to ask us, please put it in the Zoom Q&A box. That will make sure it gets into the right space and we can actually go through the questions and answer them in a timely manner, hopefully get to all of them. We have increased the AMA length from the average hour to a 90-minute now because we always seem to run over by about 15-20 minutes if we have the questions for it. So one or two things is going to happen. We're going to have a new sweat for 30 minutes and it was a bad idea to try that, or we'll do 90 minutes and still have a lot of unanswered questions because it's a losing proposition either way, one of the two. So we're going to find out. Let me see here.
今天一个主题是白皮书吧，修改白皮书，另外我不知道还有什么别的。
I apologize. I was holding up Bram. We were talking about hiding Infinity Stones.
Hiding Infinity Stones or hiding space market hashes?
I mean, they're the same thing, right?
现在他们没说啥，都扯淡呢，在这。
Had fun with their little scavenger hunt they did.
他们有重要信息的时候，我会
Tuesday, Wednesday. I don't know what date it is anymore. Wednesday, Groundhog Day. Yeah.
翻译的简短一点。
Yep, I just found him.
我也没受过什么同声传译的培训，所以也没办法同声传译。
He sees accept, and there we go. A wild Bram appears. All right, alrighty.
Perfect.
We have a quorum. Like I said, if you have questions, please put them in the Zoom Q&A question thing. We'll get through them as we can. If you are watching via YouTube,
老外都说啥？
we do have some folks who are watching that chat and putting things into the Q&A for us, which will help. If you just put it in the YouTube chat, we might get to it, we might not. It depends on if we can see it and get to it in a timely manner and the chatter is flowing, but we do have people trying to feed them in as well. But if we don't get to it, please don't be offended. It was just...
我估计今天可能还会讲一讲这个链上随机数的这么一些东西相关的。既然这个 Brian 来了，可能会讲一些 Chia list 相关的东西。
Everybody say hello to Jordan.
Hi, Jordan.
他们要介绍一下这个新人。
Jordan Schmidt here, just joined Chia on the comms side. Bring about 15 years experience in corporate comms, ranging from starting in politics through working at Riot for nearly a decade, Riot Games. And then
这个在拳头公司干过。
agency side for a little while, and then coming here. So excited to be here.
干了15年，他15年工作经验，他最近加入 Chia。
Occasionally as admittedly, I think he used, which is a brilliant name. Generally speaking, you won't hear from him all the time, but sometimes. So if you do hear from him, you can trust him. He's our head of corporate communications, so you can definitely trust him.
语言机，就国内老爱叫语言机，我觉得还是叫英文比较好一点。我觉得这个语言机翻译的很有问题。
All right. Anyone else have anything they want to share before I start going to questions?
Just point out the obvious that the new business white paper is up. For those of you who did not know that was going to end up being the topic, we were striving to get that together, and obviously happy to focus on that. But it is an AMA, so happy to also talk about other things too.
Awesome. Alrighty. First question we got is thanks for the AMA. You're welcome. You are most welcome. That was an easy one. Gene, got a question for you. New York Stock Exchange.
第一个问题就是 IPO.
Question marks.
So I think there's two questions hiding in there. We are absolutely aiming to have our equity be listed on either NYSE or NASDAQ here in the U.S. There's also a process kind of afterwards where we may very well list that equity on things like the Nikkei or the London Stock Exchange, but that'll take a little more time afterwards. If the question is global currency exchanges, the answer is already yes, and we expect to continue to expand that list as well.
Awesome. Kind of stick to the theme about exchange.
他们好像还有在别的国家上市的这么一个计划。
Regarding our IPO, there's the talk about possibility for early farmers to.
不过应该是在美国上市之后，他们可能才会考虑在别的国家上市。 你们能看见吗？
Well, first I'll start with when everyone asks me when IPO,
看不见问
the
题。
answer is that we really can't talk about when IPO until we can. So I apologize that I can't.
现在他们还不能说什么时候 IPO。
We can't say that we remain on an accelerated timeline to go public. There are two primary ways that we're likely to go public. There's actually three ways, but there's only two that I think we're likely to choose. One is with what's called a special purpose acquisition company or SPAC.
有3种上市的途径，一种是借壳
If we go that
SPAC，
direction, it's much harder for us to do what Bram and I'd like to do to be able to get farmers in. But if we go for a more traditional S1 route, we are hoping to be able to allow farmers to be able to buy shares at the offering price in the offering. And this would be with
如果是借壳的话，就是他之前说过的，这个初始的比较早的农民，就是以比较低的价格买股票的，这个就没办法操作了。 后面几种就是比较常规的，我也没听见他说啥。
So, as folks may or may not know, we did a community dev challenge with Clover that started at noon Pacific yesterday and just ended about 3 hours ago. So one of the questions we have is how many
没有直播哪来的字幕啊？
submissions were there? We had, it was 76 people signed up. I think a small handful of them were teams of 2 or 3. So I think we had
他在讲那个我参加那个比赛，
interns to
就大概有70个人参加。
The actual number of submissions, I haven't checked recently. I know in the final minutes counting down, we were somewhere around a dozen, but they had time, so we're not accepting submissions.
最后交了的人大概
afternoon today.
只有十几个吧。
URL to your GitHub URL like anytime this
这么说，我获奖概率还蛮高的。不过我感觉我交那个项目有点用力过猛了，可能会被他们看出来这些东西不像是一天做的。
We're actually going to do a complete summary on the event in 2 weeks from today. So we're going to spend next week going through
他2周后宣布那个比赛的结果。
paperwork logistics with them, and then follow up with a big community announcement the week after, talking about the winners, the projects, showcasing them, all that kind of stuff. So keep an eye out in roughly 2 weeks for updates from that whole kind of.
Can you turn the gain down on your mic a little bit? Somebody told me you're a little like you're squelchy.
We had a whole conversation before this about how I can't win. Like, I can't win. I will always get feedback about one thing or the other.
Too low.
Yeah, there's no winning. I am going to position myself a little bit and turn down the gain. So let's see if that makes a difference. Yeah, I can't win. Anyways,
他们在看什么
I have a
东西
question that I'm going to ask Bram to take a little bit, but before he does, I want to kind of preface it a bit. So the question is, with certain cat projects talking about putting NFTs
他
on
卖
the
的那个
chain,
增益调太高了。
what and when can we expect statements from us on why this is not a good idea or a bad idea? I want to say Bram has thoughts on this. He's kind of half tweeted them a little bit, so I'll let him kind of elaborate on that. But I want to preface it with, yeah, we do have comments about it being a bad idea, but also
谁获奖的？
there are things you should and shouldn't do with the technology, and there are things we'll probably give advice on, like maybe you shouldn't do that, here's why. But ultimately, the technology is capable of doing something, and it might be a bad idea because it won't scale to your expectations, and it might let you down later because you're using it the way you shouldn't, or many other things. But ultimately, we don't control the chain. We build it and maintain it. Hopefully it becomes a, years from now we can disappear overnight and it works fine because the community is taking care of it. But we're not gatekeepers that say what you can and can't have on the chain by some law. It's by
他们他讲一下他们的立场，他们只是维护这个链，他们可以去开发一些新的东西，但是他们不会去完全控制这个链，就是说他们不会决定有什么功能或者没什么功能，就是作为社区成员是可以自己开发一些功能，他们不会管这个东西。当然他们也会开发一些东西。
That's generally how things should be done. You can physically store your media files on chain. The transaction costs for this are ridiculous. Now, at the moment, transaction costs are basically 0. So multiplying ridiculous by 0 is entirely doable. However, this is not going to stay the case for long. And by trying to do this, you're, in addition to being a little obnoxious to everyone running a full node, you're hastening the day when there will be real transaction fees, and you are doing something that simply will have to stop happening when there start being real transaction fees. And it's also just really not very nice to be like forcing the whole network to send around these big files that it really didn't have to send around.
他不让再讲，就是有些人想用区块链存一些大文件。
Please don't do that.
他不建议这么做，反正费用比较高。
Just because you can do I wouldn't say loophole, but a workaround.
但是你想存的话，肯定还是能存的。
And it works. You need to really understand what that means long-term scalability, because, like he says, it works now. If you're dependent on this system, a year or two from now, it doesn't work anymore the way you want. It's no longer scalable. It's no longer affordable. That's not something we can help you with. We can't fix that for you because it wasn't meant to work that way.
It's kind of like you're getting to your seat in the stadium and it's all clogged up because everyone's taking their seats at once, and you're like, hey, look, the field's wide open. I'll just walk across the play field to get to my seat.
Also, can I add something pragmatic here? You know, if you sell an NFT to somebody and you put the picture in the NFT and it goes on chain, what you've basically done is that 2 years from now, your buyer, when he wants to sell it or she wants to sell it, is hosed. So it's not you, the NFT issuer. You've got to transfer the whole darn thing.
Well, no. It was probably stored on chain when it started, and so now you're just referencing the thing that was already stored on chain.
I don't think the people trying to do this are that sophisticated.
Oh, okay.
那这样讲 NFT 的一些问题，这个倒是突然让我觉得有点儿。就如果你要传一个图片的话，存到链上的话，那你刚开始越早传的话，你的这个成本是越低的。也就是说，你要搞 NFT 的话，应该趁这个网络费用比较低的时候，提早把这些图片全都传好，要不你以后再搞的话，你的这个成本价就会很高。
From our staff who says he has one and he will sell it for 1 Chia. That sounds a little overpriced to me.
T-shirt offer file?
Yeah, but I told him, I said, make an offer file.
Yeah, I forget what these shirts were made for. Actually, there's something on the back that.
But it is.
他穿了一个周边 Chia 的，不然
Neil just messaged me.
Clean Currency.
Yeah.
Current 什么？
I will say that.
看不清楚。
So on that note, because they do ask about swag in general, I know we keep saying swag soon, but we set ourselves with sort of a sword of Damocles over us by doing the holiday NFT, and that was intentional because we are focusing on a lot of big high priority stuff and a lot of these little things that don't have a forced reason to do something less priority because something higher priority keeps causing these things to get punted along.
他在讲那个周边商店的事儿，还有那个之前发的那个官方空投不是可以买 NFT 吗？这个 NFT 他们也在搞，但是目前不是最高优先级的东西。也写的就是 Chia 的一些东西嘛 ，Chia 什么干净的，底下感觉像是 currency 还是 current 什么 C， 看不太清楚。后面衣服后面还写了一大片，我没看清楚。这些衣服应该以后你在周边商店里都能买得到。
Yeah, so the usual answer, swag soon-ish, but it is actually progressing. Unfortunately, you can't get that T-shirt. That's not possible.
啊，买不到的吗
？Justin, your turn. Got a question for you. How are we looking for 1.3?
这个问什么时候钱包 1.3 出来
We are 1 Rails to it. We are very close to releasing the next iteration of our beta for all of that.
1.3 的话，应该就是把新钱包和原来的旧钱包整合到一块儿。
As part of that next beta phase, and then we want to let those changes marry and get the ecosystem testing those improvements along with some things we're going to bring in stream as part of the efforts after we get this next beta phase out.
他们刚才刚说了这些开的交易。
You know, the shorter side of that, less than a month, we'll probably have a viable release candidate ready.
说白了，它这上面的那个叫什么 hash green 的 USDS 交易量，我一个人就贡献了一半。
Some time to do that testing, and so that's probably the timeline there.
Awesome. Boomerang back here for a second, Gene. Someone, anonymous attendee, would like us to know that 100% they are planning to reference a one-time transaction embedded on chain for the NFTs we were discussing. They are that sophisticated.
I will happily take back what I said, but I want to make sure that the ownership is transferable without moving the freaking coin that has the picture in it. Let's just say it that way.
Fair enough. I got a bunch of questions here that kind of all tie together, Gene, so I'll let you sort of just kind of pull from a couple of them that you've tagged and kind of clear them up. They're all questions around involving IPO and pre-farm, things related to that. So, you know, can you confirm that Chia reserves are not going to be shared with VCs, which is a thing that I think we clarified.
有人在问这个预挖的这些。
With the conversion of the safe agreements, are there any time restrictions remaining for filing the IPO that force us to do it at a certain point? And I think there was one more.
USDS 国内目前
the IPO
确实没法用。
can farmers still
国外的话还
purchase shares
好，
somehow if we do
我
that plan, or would that kind of prevent that
就
from
是
ever being
转过去的
possible?
话，应该
So,
一天之
just
内
sort of
就
off
能
the
到
top,
这儿
the whole point
然后可以
of
换
the
成
debate was
USDT 和
minor was to get out the
USDC，
fact that as we
再转到
expected,
其他交易所
the,
去。
items of our
也可以
investor
直接提
documents
现
that gave any sort of ability to get
不过
Chia
只能
to
提
investors
提现成
were
美
enabled
元。
out with our most recent fundraise. There is now no way for our investors to get Chia until and unless we get public. And then everyone would have the opportunity, and we'll come back to that point in a second. The other piece of
They
that
can buy it on the open market. Like,
oh yeah, right, exactly. But let's put it this way.
他在讲这个预挖
the original
不
Chia is
会
owned by only two classes of entities.
不会
Chia
给
Network
这个
Incorporated
VC 就是投资机构的，
The secondary market is
就
all
是在 IPO 之前是不会肯定不会给
but coming back to the point,
不会解锁
question
的。
around can a
这个
farmer
白
be
皮书里
involved?
有
If
写
you were to do a SPAC, generally there'll be an announcement, and you'll be able to actually purchase shares in the SPAC on the open market. And the way these work is they often kind of trade at about the valuation the deal is going to be done at. So in some ways, it doesn't have the usual pop, but it does give you a window of time in which you could get in and just become a public investor in that entity.
你其实自己也可以搞 USDT 啊，
Oh, thank you.
你
There was one last piece of that that was
就是
asked
有
that
一
I
定
forgot
自
to
净量的
answer,
话
which is there's still timing restrictions. And yes, there are some
你就
cash
发一个彩币，
restrictions
然后
but,
就跟这个
there's no
USDS 一个道理的。
disagreement between our board management and our investor base about getting public on an accelerated timeline.
Okay. I'm gonna.
但问题就是
switch
你没有
gears
这
here
个
just one second. I've been asked to say 100.
信用，
and
就
that's the
是
answer, 100.
别人没办法轻易相信你。
100. The reason is I had a very long Twitter rant this week because I say 100 when doing voice to text, and my phone always writes it out as WON space 100. And apparently, multiple people at Chia this week have messaged me, and the same things happened. And I had to go back and edit it. And I'm like, aha, it's not just me, it's the iPhone. It's the iPhone. And people were trying to say, no, it's how you say 100. And I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure it's the phone because it happens to other people too. So.
Just to say 1 trillion.
1 trillion.
Mojos.
I will say when I'm saying 100%, you hear me stress the one, like 100. If I'm saying 100%, I'll stress that one a bit. No, I don't know. That seems to be what causes most of it. Anyways.
Siri AMA is now over. Go ahead.
Yep. Yep. I got some. Oh, well, we already answered that. We answered that. And we answered that. Gene. I had a really great one here. Oh, yeah. Justin. Plot file shrink.
这
It's been talked about a
周
lot. Where's
这
that?
周都不都
1.3?
150，这周肯定没，
I don't know if it's
可能
gonna
2
be
周之内
1.3.
应该还是有希望的。
So I just want to stress that this comes up a lot, but this is not going to be a very large shrink of the plot files. It's not like they're going to be, 8% of what they currently are or anything like that. We view this as a housekeeping improvement. It is something that is, as far as I know, still in the works. I know the engineers that have been working on it have kind of bounced back and forth between this and some other responsibilities, and that's kind of what's kind of caused the churn in its release.
This is a little bit outside of Justin's wheelhouse, so I can speak to it a bit more because I've been slowing it down. It's probably going to be, let's say around 3% thereabouts shrinkage that it'll be able to do.
他们在讲那
And in
个
the future, the plotters will be able to plot
这
directly to it,
个
so new plots made
田地压缩
3%
的问
smaller
题。
right off the bat, or possibly more or less, somewhere around there. And it's been slowed down. It's coming out after 1.3, just given how long it's going to take to do things. There's possibly another improvement that's going to come after that, not immediately, that we spent a fair amount of time studying because there's algorithmically non-trivial things in it. And that'll get maybe another like 0.5%, but there is a small chance, say 10-20% chance that will come with a dramatic improvement to the speed of plotting.
他
if
讲
that
这
gets
批
in
图
there,
的速度啊，
but probably not. Anyway, there's this non-trivial thing about compact storage of large permutations that I figured out that Dan Bonet figured out an improvement to that I don't know what he figured out. He's doing a write-up of it now,
不是
so
插件。
coming out as well. But 1.3 will not have the compactification in it. That'll come out after 1.3, but soon.
1.3不包含这个
Cool, thank you.
功能。
There is another question in a similar vein that I wanted to give Graham, and I forgot what it was. Oh yes, it was about proof of stake, which sounds like a great Graham topic. There's someone asked the question. They said, you know, we're hearing that proof of stake is turning out to be harder than originally thought.
Well,
meaning it's not
harder than some people originally.
Yeah, meaning it's not yet a secure and effective consensus mechanism for a blockchain.
说问这个 POS 这个机制， 并不像人们预想当中那样工作的那么好。
There's 2 levels of difficulties with proof of stake. One of them
然后这 Brian 补充说是不像有些人想的那样。 这他一直是不太看好 POS 的。
On top of that, there are some nightmarish
这也是他们这个团队没有搞任何 POS 的东西的原因之一吧。搞 POS 你的好处是，你的这个币价可能会前期会涨得比较快，因为你这个质押了很多的币，人为造成了很多的通货紧缩。 但是对你这个去中心化肯定是不利的。
Proof of space is just a better approach to everything because it is true Nakamoto consensus, and even just looking at the purely technical things.
它不是真正的基于中文聪这个共识机制。
And we figured out how to make all that work, and so we're way ahead of them on those as well.
I'd also add the pragmatic. If anybody wants to see what actually it works like in real world, Tron took over Steemit, and it basically ended up being proof of whatever CZ and Brian wanted to do. Now that was delegated proof of stake, but the problem is that the staking as a service is likely to be very huge and very central. So the staking as a service providers will decide the future of your blockchain.
Before I get to the next one, just want to remind folks, if you are putting questions in the Zoom chat, you are putting questions in the wrong place. I'm casually glancing at it, but not very closely. Please make sure you use the Q&A button and submit them as a Q&A question. Thank you. I got 2 for you, Gene, that kind of dovetail together nicely. The first is, are there any current efforts to support Chia on the Ledger Nano X or any other hardware wallet?
不知道干嘛用。
And instead of the usual first question,
我现在主要是搬砖用。
we have a slightly more on-topic question of, are any exchanges getting?
现在可以等他们那些什么 AMM 搞出来之后，应该就会有那种流动性挖矿池。那到时候你可以就是搞流动性挖矿。
But I can tell you that both the HSM side and the individual hardware wallet side will have some fun things happen in the next couple months.
Yeah, somewhat tangential to that, I believe I mentioned on Twitter, we're considering doing a soft fork to add opcodes. Specifically adding in G2 operations and pairing operations for BL12 381. We already have G1 because we knew we needed it for Taproot. Maybe I should have just on principle included the other things. Should have, would have, could have.
咱们未来会有个软分叉，会加一些这个操作服。
constructions to be done once that's done. So we're considering that.
这跟 Chia list 相关的一些东西。
Totally unrelated, considering a condition to assert a value coming from the chain as a random Oracle beacon, because well, we already put in all the work to make it so that you have all.
但目前这个语言里头不支持随机的，没有随机性，比较麻烦。所有随机性都得从外部引入进去。 就导致很多游戏类的东西不太好做。
So that's actually an interesting topic because it's kind of relevant to me. We actually have right now, so obviously if you go to docs.chia.net, that's sort of a landing page to all of our documentation across all things, whether it's Chia Network, the company, Chia itself, or developing for Chia with Chia Lisp and other softwares. You can kind of find a path towards everything from there. And one of the things we lead out to there is some of our documentation on GitHub about the actual Chia blockchain code repository itself. Admittedly, The exact specifics of all of the different things that can be written to our logs is not heavily documented there. However, you may have seen in our community in the last week and a half a person show up who is our new ecosystem support engineer. And we actually have another one that making an offer to next week. And we are beginning to roll out more of a developer relations team sort of exercise of people who are doing various things. And one of the things we're working on right now is I'm having them kind of review that kind of documentation and look for, they as people from the community we've picked who have built stuff against Chia, what is not clearly documented in a way. And they're going to work with our internal documentation team who helps build that documentation and kind of
他们招了几个人专门去改这个文档。
The log file is actually one of the things we talked about because a lot of third-party tools that monitor farming and monitor your systems tend to rely on the info and debug log, mostly info. And so we want better documentation for that for folks. They're actually working on that right now. So you'll find a little bit there, not a lot, but there's more coming soon in that space.
这种不错。
Gene, I got a fun tax season question for you. So for IRS purposes, how can one determine the price of Chia at the exact moment a win happens during farming? And they kind of go in a bit more wanting a better understanding of what's behind the real-time prices we find online. How is that kind of derived and understood? Especially now, given that offers are a thing and they are between individuals, and there's no homogenized tracking of that data.
So I'm not your accountant. I am not your lawyer. Chia Networks is not your accountant. Chia Networks is not your lawyer. Before transactions, you're going to have a relatively difficult challenge figuring out exactly what you should do from a tax perspective. This is one of those places where I would say you need a professional. To the extent that you are not finding professionals, Keybase people can kind of offload people who know the space and work on it. After transactions, you actually have a number of Hong Kong and Singapore exchanges that were actually trading real Chia for real values, and those prices are generally aggregated pretty well. The coin market cap infrastructure and all the various pieces kind of flow back and forth. We do believe that there is some arbitrage going on between, say, Hashgreen DEX and those exchanges, and we expect that to actually tighten over time, and that's how effectively your peer-to-peer trading gets reflected in the on centralized exchange prices. So, that's going to get better and better. I could certainly think that in the last few weeks it may not be that great because it's only been up for 3 weeks, 2 weeks, something like that. But anyway, now there is some interesting public policy activity here. In other realms, like real farmers don't pay when the corn sprouts; they pay when they go to market and sell it. A specific staker has been trying to sue for a refund to get that, and right now the IRS basically is trying to buy their way out of the case. We'll see if it goes forward or not. Rules may change here. To the extent you're all concerned about it, I would give you this piece of advice. Be very straight up with the IRS that you did make something. And then to the extent that you feel like you're overpaying, save your records so that you can later go get a refund should the legal interpretation of how this all works change. And oddly enough, the IRS has to pay you interest.
这老哥也是。
We're not your accountants, we're not your lawyers, but something I have learned.
为啥会想着交税呀？这也太老实了。
Is that he says time and time again he would rather deal with the IRS 100 times than a state tax board once, because the IRS is actually incredibly understandable. They understand people are human, and
对这个
they will work with you gladly.
发展快的链他们的模式和 ETH 非常像，都是合约模式的，所以搬过来比较简单。说白了就是一个在以太坊的基础上面改了改。Chia 跟比特币的那个模式更像一点，但是比特币链上你听说过有什么应用吗？没有听说过。所以说目前没有什么太现成的东西能直接搬过来，都是得从头开发。
Obviously, they're very different, but I think that the thing that drew me to crypto and blockchain is the same thing that drew me to gaming, which is it's a lot of really smart people trying to do something really unique. There's a lot of agility, a lot of expertise, and a lot of interesting work being done. So I really like the challenges, and it's similar to gaming. I think that there's also a lot of a lot of folks are really, will say, they're bought in, right? Like they see it as the future, right? You know, gaming 10 years ago is not gaming today, right? So a lot of people saw that and said, this is the future of.
这老哥在讲他的心路历程，为什么加入Chia？
I think a lot of people are looking at blockchain and crypto now and saying this is the future of finance. This is the future of how we're going to handle data. And so I'm just, it's really exciting to be at the forefront of these technological evolutions.
And to kind of, for those who don't know, before I joined Chia, I was in the game industry for 16 years as well, so it was a huge jump for me too.
100倍，70-80的100倍，那不就8000了
The same stuff, just in a different way. Yeah. Also,
8000的得有段过
when it
程
comes to interacting with the community, a lot of people joke about the crypto world having some very spicy people in the community, some very spicy people on social media. Jordan and I can both attest. None of y'all are come even remotely close to a League of Legends player. You just don't trust us.
还在说撸啊撸。
So we've got a few questions here. I forgot to preface with this subject beforehand, and I probably should have. On the subject of NFTs and our NFT standard, we're not really ready to talk about that yet because you may have seen on Trello it has popped up as kind of a little footnote in a few places on our Trello, on the public roadmap, and a few other places. We do have some team members who are actively working on figuring out and charting a course to what our NFT standard will be. However, we're not ready to talk about it yet because there's a lot of stuff they need to kind of.
他们还在
I'm going to wait until we
开发这个 NFT 的标准，
So I can't go into a lot of
目前还
detail
不
on
能
those
说太多
questions
细节的
until
东
we're
西。
ready to kind of dive in it, and we'll have those folks probably on a relevant AMA or even maybe a focused Q&A for that reason. But two questions that I did kind of want to lightly touch on that was one, clearing that up in general. But then the other question I had was
十倍问题我觉得也
they
不
were
大。
asking me, first of all, the
这个人是拳头的
if you
这
see right
个
now, there's a lot of people out there who are offering cats
右边第
as a
三个
token
这
to
个新
exchange for
人
an NFT, and someone has that, like, is that
但是他好像不玩撸啊撸。
successfully, or we all just gotten tokens for no reason? And the answer is yeah. That concept of exchanging a rare cat for an NFT layer is totally doable, depending on the technical competencies of the people who have made this. But also bear in mind, we did it too. We offered everyone a rare token for the holidays that you can redeem later for an NFT. We would not have done that if we didn't think it was possible. And they're all just kind of emulating our lead on that one. As a matter of fact, I think we were the first to do that. Then everyone's kind of like, wait, this is a thing? And then they all began kind of doing it. But yeah, it's both possible from a technical point of view of the blockchain, because these are all just very smart things that using Chia Lisp can do stuff, but also a user can just build a website or tool that you take inputs and you create outputs in another as a bridge kind of thing. There's a lot of ways smart people can do this. So don't worry about like, is that concept followable and are bad? Now, an individual organization who's doing this, you want to make sure if you're going to spend
你
money
刚开始应该卖一下，我刚开始挖的都卖了，
backing the right horse,
也不是都卖了，
or
稍微留了
who
几
isn't as
反正最起码把本儿回来，
diligent your homework on, will they actually
把云挖的本儿
follow
给
through on
回
that?
来。
But on a technical level, totally doable, totally possible. And then, yeah, as to talking about the actual NFT standard roadmap, can't really go into that. But one of the questions
刚开始1000多的没显示太高了，
difference between the two, and then without
啥应用都没有
I
呢。
can't really explain the technical difference on that, or more to the point, the team building it doesn't want us to because they haven't finalized that standard. But there's kind of a similar concept. I mean,
我跟你说啊，Chia的价格啊，其实我经常说跟散户没什么太大关系，因为他们不靠散户去炒、去拉盘、去操作。Chia的价格只跟这些大机构有关系。你啥时候听见了什么公司、什么大的公司、大的机构入场了，那时候才是真正会影响价格的时候。一个大公司入场砸个几十亿美金，这对他们来讲就是毛毛雨。那几十亿除以这雨娃的币，那一个币都能涨个100多。
About not just why we patent the things we do and make them open and the thought process behind that, but also the alliance that we're a part of as well.
Yeah, so this is 100%.
所以说，我们怎么看待这个币并不重要，重要的是这些大公司怎么看待这个
It's
币。
not a good war, and it's good for nobody. But what we're able to do by patenting all of our core technologies that are patentable is to make sure that no patent troll later.
历史还好吧，习惯了就好。我也没学过，我也现学的。习惯了之后就感觉其实写起来还效率挺高的。
Companies like Meta and Block and ourselves and Coinbase and
但确实跟现在主流的编程语言这个思维方式不是特别一致。
No one like rogue chain or rogue patent troll come in and stop progress.
啊，对，这周他们不是还拿了一个专利，一个美国专利吧，发下来了。他们好像19年开始申请的那个专利，所以现在3年了快。不过专利一般都是很慢。但是这个专利他们不会去就是当专利流氓去。 主要是为了这个保护自己的这个知识产权不受别人这个
So we love that. We think it's a good deterrent. We
侵犯。
never have to use that, but we did want to make sure that the stuff is correctly patented defensively, so it takes it out of the warfare.
Oh, ready? Got 2 more related ones here.
我倒是下个项目想搞一个 GameFi 的项目。我觉得目前没有什么太好的 GameFi， 说白了，那几个所谓的元宇宙的什么东西做的都跟屎一样。
Exact date, harder to call. That's a Paul question, and Paul's not here. But there's a couple use cases. I'll give 3. There's more. One thing is we're going to use DID as an ownership model for things like NFTs, so that you don't necessarily use your private key, you use the DID, and therefore you can have reputation and some other things. So there's that. Also, we like DIDs because a lot of places today where you would otherwise use your private key, where it'd be more interesting to use your DID, and that way your key management is somewhat separate from your access controls. That lets you more easily recover from losing a key, those kinds of things. That's exciting.
对，我觉得就是，但凡真的是做游戏这个行业的，看到他们这些区块链上的游戏，可能都觉得很垃圾。那我觉得难点是在于构建一个跟这个区块链交互的一个数据层。
restricting cats that way is actually quite a bit of work, so it's kind of a low priority until someone important.
我知道国内有一帮人，也不是国内吧，国际上有一帮人在做这个以太坊的这个偏底层的一些工具箱之类的东西，或者开发平台一样的东西。
The general roadmap of how NFTs are going to work is that an NFT remembers which DID owns it at the current time, and when it's sold, it is told by the old owner and the new owner that it's being transferred and what the new price is, and then it does a payment back to the original issuer of some fraction of that. That's the enforcement on chain. So DID standard, which is mostly just vanilla singletons in the new format.
你讲这个 DID 钱包的事情，跟 NFT 还有点关系。
DID is mostly just a raw one of those, but it's necessary to invoke those for the way we're planning to make to make NFTs work.
Alrighty. Before I ask the next question, I want to point out that after being asked to turn down my microphone gain because it was too high, now someone in chat is sounding that my gain is too low, and I go 1 notch down. So I can't win. I can't win. Gene, how are the ASICs coming along on that subject?
So our ASIC development is on track. It's kind of weird to have a project so on track. We are going to see a significant speed up from the current fastest time war. We're hoping to have silicon in our hands probably on Thanksgiving.
讨论那个 ASIC 的 timeout 那个机器，这跟我们没什么关系，基本上。
We're basically on schedule for what we'd hope to have, and are seeing a hardware ASIC that is going to be quite good. One thing I think we've kind of changed our opinion on, and I kind of want to start to circulate this, is that there's only going to be a few hundred of these. It could be somewhere between 50 and 150 to give a better sense. Each one is a full-time one, so each one has all 3 VDFs in it. we will probably actually have an application process to make sure that these Time Lords are getting in the hands of researchers and people who need them in our ecosystem, so that we kind of get these in the right places at the right time. And I think Bram wants to add something.
哦，它的这个机器还挺贵的，大概1500一个。
FPGA hardwares considerably in advance of ASICs. Unfortunately, the FPGAs are actually going to be a little slower than IFMA because it turns out that IFMA is really fast. But that will allow us to test out our integration and make sure we're ready to have a system that
一般人用不着这东西。
they're up and running.
Alrighty, gonna do a fun little softball question and do a spicy one. Gene, how big is Chia network staff at this point? What's kind of our projection for where the company might be 5 months from now, both what we're trying to do and the company itself?
I believe the number I put in the business white paper was about 65. It's a little outdated. It's, I think, 70 or 71. We were hiring quickly. As you see in the business white paper, it is about 60% development. So, development continues to be the majority of both the company and the hires. I don't think we're going to double in 5 months again from here, so I don't think 140. But it would not at all surprise me if we get into the high 90s, low hundreds by 5 months from now.
他们会招到100人左右。
Various organizations, so still hiring engineers and Chia Lisp.
现在开发人数差不多占一半，1半多一点，60%左右%。
Kind of waiting to build revenue. They'll grow with revenue, but that's kind of independent of the rest of the company.
最近他们确实在疯狂招人啊，我认识好多人，好像都在面。
Still careers out there. Still looking for great developers, especially. Please make sure you check the career button at the bottom of the page. But it's nice. We're at a good, manageable size. We're a global footprint, and have most of the team we need to go execute for the next year or two.
All right, and Bram, I got a question for you. Do we have any comments or thoughts on the Solana wormhole incident?
Yeah, so we're in the process right now on working on
元宇宙经济模型是个很复杂的问题，肯定不会是单一的一个渠道。我觉得基本上大多数人都没想清楚这个问题。
One of them is where it's federated, so there's someone who's just an issuer who owns themselves a certain amount of stuff and just issues the cat directly. Another one is where there's some thing on Bitcoin or Ethereum where people send their funds to, and then it comes out on the other side, and then it can.
这女的说白了，就有些人他属于顾问，懂吧？就是他平时不管公司运营这些事情，他只是关键时候了，你需要人脉、需要牵线搭桥的时候，需要资金的时候，他们帮你去找人，干这个用的。你如果看过那个一个美剧叫《硅谷》的话，你就会比较清楚这些人的分工是什么。就是你会，其实在国内创业也是一样的，你会拉一些比较知名的人物就进你的公司，给他们一些股份，但是这些大佬呢，一般不会管你公司运营，他只是会给你提供一些资源。
Gene, two things. First, the easy one. Back to the subject of our staff and hiring for the future. Our good friend from YouTube, the poor investor, would like you to know that he can get really good coffee for you. So.
Great.
And then more seriously, the database V2 stuff we've talked about that people seen a lot of PRs for and progress in GitHub. Is that going to be included in 1.3?
So it will, but it will not be the default. So you will be able to run in the new mode, but you will not immediately be put into that mode. We are going to be asking people to do that because we want to get some real feedback from the various operating systems and situations to make sure all of that is good and sound before we start switching people. You can do a while farming migration.
你说左边这个左下的这个吗？是啊，它好像是一个开发部门的头吧。可能钱包还是什么的部门的头。
One of those things that you can just pull up top of your head instantly, and it's magically wired to your brain, and we don't know how. What's the full?
你看了这么多期，还不知道这几个人分工啥吗？这个是负责这 community 的，这个主持的这个左边最上边的这个。 这 COO， 然后这 Brown
He's close.
这么说，
11 and 765.
这相当于个主城吧。他们团队比较早的几个开发的之一。
Yeah, so about that, where's that at, Justin? Where's that
他主要负责 OE
Yeah,
一些东西，我感
There
觉
are some other things we
就
discussed
每
that
次
we're not
出
really
什么
talking
大
about
问题的时候，都是他
a
在
little higher precedence.
解释这些细节
So
上的
yeah,
东
I
西。
mean, eventually, yes, it will probably be after we get these other big things out the door. It is something that we are aware that people are looking for. We are at the point now where we're very comfortable with this platform. The decisions and things that still need to exist for us to get it out to you, we need to take what we currently have, winnow it down into usable operational information for the layperson, because there's a lot of stuff that's like really technical in this dashboard, so you guys probably don't really care about. And then like get some good documentation out there of like what these numbers mean, because like if I show you here's what the mempool is, and then like here's our 3% to either end trend line, you probably won't understand what those numbers are unless you have like a degree in mathematics.
这老哥就是基本上负责监控这个网络状况，
And so it's like user
属于
experience
运维
as
的
well
啊，
as
他
like
是运维的一个
finding how
头
those
吧，
systems
应该属于。
scalable, and making it cacheable so that the data isn't like, you know, super stale. Once we get that stuff together, it'll be out shortly. So I don't know, a couple months probably is a legitimate timeline for that.
And can you comment on the distribution of nodes?
Yeah. So we are very well globally distributed. No one
他在
nation
讲这个
has,
去中心化
you know,
的
majority
分
of the
布，
nodes.
这个比较重要。
Biggest participants are China, the United States, Russia, Germany, and Canada. No. Hold on, let me
I think
expand
it
it.
is.
中俄美加
So Canada, and then which country code is TH? I don't recognize the country code
TH.
TH.
Turkey, right?
Yes, Turkey. That's
Turkey's
it.
TH, yeah.
土耳
Yeah, so,
其，
so those are our top 5, and then or top 6 rather.
中美
And then,
俄加拿大土
I
耳
mean, our
其
largest,
节点数是
participants
最
are
多
obviously
的
the。United States and China, but no, you know, no nation holds a plurality of nodes. Something I want to mention.
土耳其为啥这么多节点？
We have more nodes in like the southern hemisphere of the United States than a lot of blockchains have in the world. So I mean, like we have a huge adoption in places.
他
that
美
there
国
are,
节点不
you know,
少，
only a couple 100,000 computers in these nations, and you know they've got maybe 1,000 Chia nodes or a couple dozen Chia nodes. I think that's like a huge statement to like how well our software performs on low scale nodes and how big of a deal this is for people that aren't in the Eurocentric, America-centric economic sphere. And so I don't know, I just think that's really neat, and it kind of makes this like, you know, crazy stuff we talk about kind of reality a little bit for me.
Yeah, I'd also like to point out that you know, before the holidays and after the holidays, the actual Chinese percentage has gone back up. You know, I personally think it's that people have been shifting out of the Ethereum and into Chia farming in China.
You know, China is our largest growth market right now. As far as adding nodes daily.
这猜的还挺准的。他说这个为什么中国的这个数量就是在节前好像到节后这个有一个微型的这么一个趋势，怎么说？可能是过节的时候大家都把机器关了。就可能你这个家里头有客人来了，你开个机器太吵了，可能很多人都把机器关了。然后现在好像就又回来一些，应该是差不多亲戚都走完了。
Gene, are there further improvements coming in 1.3 specifically targeted at assisting with the performance issues of powered nodes to help alleviate those further?
对中国的这个情况还挺了解。
Significant improvement that we found at the very last minute, or released 1.2.11 that we decided was too close to release to.
应该是他们团队里头中国人说的吧？我觉得。
Quite a while. There are quite a few other things. You know, I have joked to the community that we are going to continue to find boneheaded things we were doing, like checking every block twice. Some of those things are now in, and so you will see a pretty nice performance improvement from 1.3 overall. Obviously, the new light wallet's in there, so that's another huge performance increase. Wallet not having to go against your node all the time.
他开始在
database improvements actually may be
在吹 1.3 了，这样的大家的期待又会拉高了。1.3应该会是一个比较大的更新，在各方面应该都会，就各种 bug 还有各种的这个性能应该都有所提高。
there was a Reddit thread about this today that I kind of chat with folks on. They were like, there hasn't been a release since November. It's like, well, depends how you look at it. We have all these beta releases.
很多人吐槽就是这个钱包去年11月之后就没有再更新过了。
And more on getting you a release with a meaty group of changes that we have as much
所以
understanding as possible.
正常来讲，你也可以想象一下，攒了好几个月的更新，应该会是比较大的。
And then needed to upstream that, and that's been a process. And so yeah, there was the light release in the middle there. So
exactly. Yeah, that was kind of the point I made with them. Is we've had these beta light walls, we've had these other things.
20密码
Production releases is not a great.
有啊，你没用吗？已经出来了。
Faster is not better.
We are working on getting our release process consolidated on a single.
Yeah. Jordan had an amazing quote he gave me earlier this week, and that
你自己可以设置的呀。
Steady is smooth, and smooth is fast. Let's see here. Gene got one for you. Back tailing off some of that white paper stuff about the pre-farm. White paper talks about how the pre-farm will help Chia devs in the ecosystem.
你没有设置。
As laid out in white paper, the Chia cultivation grant program is a way to help the community, but their question is how does
它默认情况下好像
two separate things, but you want
看你什么系统吧。Linux 好像默认情况下是不需要。
To pay people in the grant program or invest in their new projects comes directly from the fact that we can raise equity against the pre-farm. So the pre-farm is one of the major drivers that it makes it very easy for us to go.
好像我说实话我也不太用这个，反正我也不下载那些乱七八糟的东西，所以我也一般也不太可能被盗。
Buy groceries in the United States with it, you have to sell it, and we don't really think that's a great idea. We would rather the pre-farm sit there and we'll take the dilution and we'll raise the fiat and give you the fiat.
好像是你可以就是锁住之后，好像就需要输密码了吧？我记得是。
challenge this past 24 hours would be fun to give you, 100 Chia and some fiat, right? So that you kind of get a piece of it. But
密码是本地的。
as we say in the white paper, we really can't do anything with the strategic reserve.
但是本地的也管用啊，就是攻击者不知道你本地密码是多少。
Trying to scroll through here, gotta find ones you guys have actually tagged. Here we go. This person says, I've seen material on your site about Chia being attractive to people with unused space on their computers, but the economics, even if you're using a pool, seem right now to not make that make sense.
你怎么都放到 OK 了？你可真是心大。
Is it actually still viable for a person to take
OK 哪天没了，你哭都来不及。
It absolutely is.
然后要不就跟上次一样，几个月不能提现。你要是想变现的话，如果急用钱的话，那都没办法。哎呀，不是，你要想把Chia转出去的话，反正都没办法。
You could potentially win a lottery if you press this button and let us manage your space for you on your behalf. It is a very different thing to pitch.
放交易所是相当于免费给交易所放了一个无息贷款。
Than it currently is to be able to actually manage your free space, then it's going to be a very different value proposition for the other few million nodes we want.
Alrighty. Let's see. What's who wants to take this one? Kind of, what are some of the next big things we're going to be releasing? People know that we got the light wallet coming out. That's coming. We just did offers. What are some things that we probably haven't talked about a whole lot?
有人问下一个大新闻是什么？
That we want people to know about.
Well, we're definitely heading in the NFT direction, as we've mentioned, but there's not much more we can say about that.
NFT 是一个
now getting on the radar, as is
DID
control pieces. So. We're going to be building the tools that we want to use to custody our own pre-farm, and we think those are going to be very useful tools for both normal people, farmers, and businesses. So that's one of the big next kind of things.
Yeah, that is something where it will be possible for people outside of Chia to audit not the exact keying material that we have, but to audit the rules and requirements of moving the pre-farm. You'll be able to see and watch as it moves yourself using the same tools that we will, and we're also going to be productizing that for everyone. But the among the rules that's going to be enforcing are that the pre-farm can only be moved at a certain rate, so it will actually be enforced on chain.
搞个冷钱包放进去不就好了吗？
On a preset schedule.
Okay. Let's talk about the actual blockchain itself a second. The blocks in the white paper we mentioned about how
我目前没被盗，
one
我现
third
在
of the
钱
blocks
包
are
也有
transaction blocks.
2、3个，
What are the other
挖
blocks
矿
for,
一个，
actually?
冷钱包一个，搬砖一个。
They are to add weight to the thing, increase the security of it so that people can't reorg it, which it does a few things. It increases how quickly everything gets buried, so you're sure it's not going to get reorged. It provides more reward events so that the farming rewards are less noisy, and also because the next transaction block is the next one that's a certain amount of time after the last one that was a transaction block. It makes it so that the noise between the noise and the amount of time between blocks is much less. That you get, blocks are come in very rarely more than usually at about a minute, but very rarely more than 3 minutes. Where in Bitcoin that happens, the block comes in every 10 minutes, but more than half an hour happens all the time. So those are the benefits of it working in that way.
Yeah, each transaction block is on average 52 seconds apart. And one of the more novel attacks against our blockchain versus other blockchains is a farmer bribery attack, where you would try to get the last X number of farmers to change the foliage, what you won and what you lost. Adding those individual blocks every 18.75 seconds means that between transaction blocks, you can't just bribe the former farmer. You got to find the 2 other farmers.
Yeah.
PP 钱包
it's a little
我没用
complicated
过。
because you have the foliage is only signed by the people who made the foliage blocks.
但一般来讲，
it's
我都
these
不太
slightly
会
different
用
attacks,
非
where the
官方的
complete
钱
reorg
包。
of doing an attack where you changed who was putting stuff on, that requires a conspiracy of everyone. But you do potentially have the ability to do just a foliage reorg for a little while, but then most people who are making new blocks are going to get really mad at you and not let you do that reorg later. So, but that gets a little involved to the exact nature of the attacks.
Yeah.
All right. One of our most recent features, offer files. They currently don't support the ability to partially fulfill an offer. Is that something we've considered and chose not to do, or are considering maybe adding later, or could?
有人问这个 offer， 你必须得要么全接受，不能接受一部分。
You can make an offer file that says whatever you want. So you can make an offer file that just gives a formula. It says, I'm going to spend this amount to get at least this exchange rate back for it, or say I'm going to spend up to this amount for exactly this exchange rate coming back for it. Those are things that are completely possible to do. We just haven't done them yet.
他们只是没把东西做那么复杂，但是实际上是可以实现的。
We talk about in the white paper. Go ahead, Justin.
I just wanted to give a point of order. If you've asked a question, you don't have to keep asking it. We see your questions.
Yeah, there's a couple that popped up a couple times. Yeah. That said, if you've asked the questions in the Q&A form, we see your questions. If you're asking them in chat, we may very well miss them, unfortunately. So we'll do our best. In the white paper, we talk about how there's Chia network, the company, and a lot of people didn't realize we have a European subsidy. We also talk about a Singaporean subsidy eventually in the future. Some folks have asked, what's the situation? Is it going to be opening soon? Is it a new thing soon?
So we do have.
你就新建一个钱包，然后把密钥记好了，保存好了，然后把钱打进去，然后不要在任何电脑上面就是导入这个密钥就好了呀，就没人会偷得了你的。你可以密钥存到一个 U 盘里头，存那个文本文件里头，然后 U 盘你就不要插到任何电脑上，除非你最后要用的时候你再插到有电脑上。当你用强的时候，你再同步。这冷钱包存的钱都是你不经常动的钱，你可以放到钱包里去；经常会用的钱就不要放到钱包。
Well, full-time employee equivalent is what I call them in the white paper. Sorry.
All right.
对，不联网电脑也可以，但是成本比较高嘛。
Bram, a few weeks back, you kind of crowdsourced some thought, and you wanted the people's kind of feedback on maybe what is the best path for us to
就
take
把
involving
民谣
a
存
potential
的
soft fork for the divide era.
或者把数据库也一
You
个
wanna
就是钱包
talk a
数据
bit
库
more
也一
about
块
that
存
particular
存到一个
problem
U
and
盘里
about
头
our
就好了。
actual thoughts around
然后
some
当你用的时候，
components.
可以直接从那个上司同步的地方同步，这样快一些。
Bitcoin in the early days had a lot of bug fix some soft forks. Bug
就
fix
操作
soft
起来
fork,
肯定麻
so
烦一
soft
些
fork in，
但是
general
安
is
全性
something
肯
that
定
was
是有保
technically
障。
allowed and you're making it not allowed now. There are, when I say bug fix soft fork, I mean something where there was some behavior that's just clearly busted.
我刚才说了半
just
天，
wrong.
他
I mean,
们
it's
欧洲和
specified
新加
clearly,
坡的
but it's
分
just
布，
wrong behavior. So you just make that not be a valid thing to do. That whole code path, it just can't be hit at all anymore. Turns out we had some problems with the division operator. Our div mod operator is fine, partially because div mod's a lot easier to run tests of, and it's a lot clearer what its semantics are supposed to be. What we're doing is we're making it so that division continues to work, but not if the operands are negative. So in the future, if either operand to a division operator is a negative number, it just pukes and says, no, you can't do that. I think that's normally what people want. That normally when you're doing division, you only want the two things to be positive. If you do want the negatives behavior, you still have diff mod that works. That's always worked appropriately. So we're already rolling out disallowing it in the mempool, and at some point in the future that it will become a consensus thing that blocks are not allowed to have the negatives in the division operator, not just stuff in the mempool. Yeah, it appears to be people almost never hit that accidentally, but we're being extremely conscientious about not having weird edge cases in how CLDM works.
Alrighty. I like this question. This is an interesting one. Bram and Gene, when it comes to adoption of Chia, what keeps you guys up at night?
The main issue we're having right now is on-ramps. On-ramps and off-ramps. So that's obviously a big focus for us right now. But also just building real technology, like what are cryptocurrencies actually good for? How can we build real value here? And the idea is that the value of Chia will follow that. So we have lots of initiatives going on right now that we've been talking about. I am actually very excited about our internal custody solution because I've always been excited about working on great internal custody, about just great custody solutions, because that is something that cryptocurrencies can actually do better than banks do right now. And these types of solutions should be used internally within all kinds of corporations. I think someday the FedWire will offer CLVM as possible semantics for your deposits that are kept on FedWire, and that will be much, much better than the current thing. That is something that would totally make sense for CLVM, and you absolutely would not even consider doing that with EVM at all, no way. I am very excited about working on custody solutions. Custody solutions are things that aren't sexy because they don't make numbers go up, but that in a sane world, the whole entire banking industry would be super excited about this. I'm hoping that partially once they do understand how things can be done better, they will get excited about it. But that's a process. So first steps for us is our internal custody solution and dog food it ourselves.
他在研究那个
we were both asked this question right before. I think
叫什
transaction
么？
launch,
我不知道中文该咋说
you know, I think our answer to that
，custody
was adoption period. And the nice part is
就
we
是
don't
资金
want
监
to
管的
actually
那
see
个方案吧，
you know,
就比如说
between
预
all
挖的
bankers
这个
together, we have a
资金
pipeline
怎么保证
and
它
we're
不
doing
会乱
DeFi.
花？
I think it's very clear that you know adoption is occurring.
然后很多银行对这个东西也比较感兴趣。
On Keybase, on Reddit, you know, you can see and feel the momentum. I think one of the things I worry about
基本上大型的金融机构都应该比较感兴趣，他们手里钱很多，然后他们得跟投资人
So we're kind of excited about.
对投资人负责，他们得保证这个资金不会
All right, we have
说没
plans
就
around
没。
L2. We had some discussions around it.
We'll talk more about it, but I'm very happy we've been able to kind of figure out.
比特币过4万，应该基本上可以说是开始
First to the good problem of having fees,
反
and
弹
then
了
to the
吧？
even better problem of being specific about which fees should go on which chain.
这波反弹不知道反弹回到多少。
So with the launch of offers, we had a couple different things like offer bin and hash green and Stably. Stably being notable because it's the first like solid on-ramp, off-ramp that we enabled with the stablecoin. However, as folks have mentioned in some of the questions here, it's been a bit hit or miss in the experience for end users with Stably due to technical problems on their side. Are there any alternative paths to buying and selling Chia directly against offers that we can talk about that are coming, or any future plans in that space?
Well, obviously, Stably is expecting to add both wrapped Bitcoin and wrapped Ethereum. Also, I would like to say kind of two things about the Stably situation. Some of that is on us with a light wallet Weta. It's been challenging for them in certain situations, and so we're making sure they're getting good support there. But also, I think a lot of people underestimate the demand in our community for all these things. It's a lot of crypto projects, even well-known ones, don't really have 50, 60,000 people kicking around on a daily basis who want to go do something. So I think that's been a little bit of surprise to not just them, but other people who've launched products in our space. And I think that's a really good sign, but can lead to some short-term pain. That said, we totally believe that Stably is going to be the first, not the only in any way. Being able to comment on timelines and who you can read between the lines about which ones we prefer, but at the same time, we don't really get to choose if other people want to integrate to the chain. So, you'll ultimately see, I think, a very wide list of various assets. Plus, we expect more wrapped and less trust wrapped types of on-ramps and off-ramps for things like Ethereum and Bitcoin.
All right, cool. Next one I had. Chia is hiring a Chinese technical community manager. Have we resolved that yet? I'll take that one. So we do have a Chinese technical community manager. They are just really good at what they do, and they're really good at a lot of other things.
They are. 他们招了几个中文社区的经理。
We do have several candidates in the pipeline right now. We haven't really finished that process. We're talking
to candidates 还没正式录取，但是有几个候选人。
On Chia's website, if you go to chia.net, there's a careers link at the bottom. You can apply there.
你也可以去申请这个职位，在他们网站上面。
But I'm always happy to see more candidates. We do hope to get that resolved one way or the other here within the next.
这个倒是我听他们团队那中国人说了一下，好像是有几个候选人。
Let's see what else I had. Another follow-up question I had on the Clover Dev Challenge. So to kind of rehash the answer I gave earlier, we had about 60 to 70 entrants. They are all either working in teams or individuals. The actual number of submissions we haven't calculated yet, so I can't give folks a direct answer on that, but just to kind of repeat, we're gonna have a final summary on the whole event in about 2 weeks from now. Sometime after next, we'll start sharing information with a big announcement of here's everyone who participated who kind of wants to share what they participated in general, and here's everyone who actually won. How that result will be framed and shown to everyone is going to kind of vary based on what the actual results are and a couple of things that kind of have to be decided yet. But we're going to share with you guys all information around there. If you ask us questions between now and then, the answer is going to be, well, we'll talk to you on like the 17th. Sorry, but we can't dole out piecemeal updates. We'd rather just have a campaign we have for this. So that's kind of the last time I'm going to, both here in the AMA and over the next week, kind of talk about that event until we've actually finished our work on resolving that event. We had a really great turnout. We're really happy with the teams that participated. We had some really great conversations in Keybase as they hashed about ideas. A lot of them
他们还在这个筛选招聘过程中，只是有了几个候选人。
And they had a lot of really help with each other. It was a really fun thing to watch happen. I look forward to doing something like this in the future that's much longer, over many days with a larger group, because it was really cool seeing the community work on that. Let's see here. We've got, oh wait, nope, never mind. You already answered that one, Gene. Justin, given proof of space and time is superior, their words, not mine, but I won't correct them. And that Chia plots can be reused to farm other cryptos that are based on forks of Chia. Is there anything that we could be doing to better help those projects move forward, and to also help evangelize proof of space and time with other blockchain technologies to which kind of leveraging it seems like more advocates from other chain technologies who kind of have kind of overlap with us might be beneficial.
So I'm going to borrow Gene's favorite thought experiment. You could theoretically fork proof of space and time into any proof of work blockchain.
今天搬砖
There's
收益
no constraint there that you could swap your consensus to a different one. It would be a hard fork.
也有一
So,
个
I mean, honestly, if there was
8-90
real
的。
like buy-in from that side to do a consensus swap, I think we would certainly be willing to commit dev resources to it. I certainly would be willing to commit whatever operational resources we would need to help them get that going. I think the large barrier to adoption for other blockchains like proof of work or proof of stake blockchains is a commitment to changing your consensus. A lot of these communities are very religious and they're accepting of the one true coin or the one true truth about how blockchain runs, and that's distinctly a hard sell. I don't know if you guys have ever talked with, not to rail on Bitcoin too hard, but Bitcoin maxis on Twitter are kind of religious.
Bitcoin, no way. Bitcoin people are like, no, you don't understand. All the value comes from that. If we didn't have that, there would be no value.
The bigger the hole in the ozone layer, the more value generated.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe Dogecoin is more amenable to it, but low priority.
Honestly, if Dogecoin people came to us and said, "Can you help us move?"
再说狗狗 V
Actually,
Dogecoin。
I did do some talking to some of them before, and I was the one who dropped the ball on it, so maybe you should try and pick that up, but it's been a low priority for us. So.
There are a couple projects where we absolutely would be welcoming, and I think they aren't as religious about this underlying issue. So,
他们说有个 就是会不会 会不会搞一个用他们的机制再搞一个 B， 就是如果别人想搞的话。
Is anyone working on a cloud-based developer platform for Chia, ideally with a full node running?
Yes.
Yes. Have you heard of Clover? Justin, you want to talk about that one a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really neat. So the Clover people are they've been developing this platform for quite some time. They demoed it for us a little bit ago when it was actually a little crunchier than it is now. They made some cool improvements since then. But it is a really whiz-bang system. One of the guys on my team was doing some smart coin development today on one of his hobby projects and like linking us to his Clover environment so we could kind of see what he was up to. It was really neat. So they've set up a system where you can have a just-in-time
他在讲跟他们合作的那个云开发的平台 Clover， 就是他们比赛这次比赛用的那东西。说实话，有点意思，但不是特灵活，我感觉。
One question I'll answer quick. Is Chia TK a subsidy or are they licensing or a trademark? Chia TK, like many of the companies out there who are pools or are other providing resources for Chia, they are licensing the use of Chia as part of their brand. They are one of the many companies who've reached out to us and said, we're making tools for Chia, we're making software for Chia, we're running a Chia pool, those various things. And we have cover conversation with them and we give them some legal guidance on how they can and can't use the word Chia in their name. It's hard to create like a master index you can publicly share over who's got the right to leverage our name and who doesn't. So unfortunately, we don't have like an easy to find thing to look at that. But no, they're not a subsidiary of us, and they're not they're not affiliated with us as a business. They're just licensing their right to the name Chia to provide resources to the Chia community. That said, lots of people out there do have rights to use the name. If you ever see someone who attested doing so, but is doing something incredibly shady that you think is problematic, do bring it to our attention, because sometimes we have a really great relationship with someone and those organizations change hands and the new owners decide to do questionable things, and we don't always know because we've had a good relationship for a long time and things can change. So if you're ever in doubt and wonder, it's okay to ask us and keep it.
我觉得就最 最想让他们快点搞的是那个随机性的东西。
Someone has asked we've talked a little bit about how offer files are foundational.
这个搞出来了，很多东西就都能搞，而且很简单就可以搞。
Do we consider them done at this point, or is there more changes?
现在要做一个东西得拐弯抹角，得绕半天才能做。
Offer files as they are now are a standard that will continue to be supported, is the intention. Someone earlier asked about more features where they're a bit malleable and flexible in exactly what their offer's for. That'll be supported at some point. Working on AMMs for them, which can act as liquidity providers, which is related to offer files. So lots more stuff going on, a lot of stuff being done by the community in terms of putting stuff together. So yeah.
Okay.
比特币的145、415
So we
了。
had a little conversation, I think, last week about blue boxes and kind of overselling people on the desire.
随机性是什么？就是现在你没办法用它这个语言产生随机数。
percentage or bring up the compactification percentage depending on how you calculate.
就很多应用没办法做，也不是没办法做吧，就是做起来比较麻烦。就比如说，我想做一个买彩票的一个应用，我没办法通过它这个链上的数据产生一个真的随机数，我必须得提前输入一个数，就提前把下一期的中奖号码输入进去。这样的话就就没办法搞，你知道吗？ 或者说你借助外部的因素，说我的这个彩票的中奖号码跟下期一样，但是你就没办法通过这个区块链去保证你一定会按照这个号码去开奖，懂吗？所以有很多的这个矛盾在里头。有了随机性，包括游戏也是，游戏是最需要随机性的，所有的 game。 所谓的 game 就是指充满了随机性的一个东西，就叫 game。包括赌博它也叫 game， 游戏它也叫 game， 它共同点就是有不确定性。这不确定性是很重要的。
But the current offerings had too much electricity, weren't really secure programming environments, or were illegal securities. And so you got to fix those really big three things to go build a platform that can be deployed globally to become the rails for money and finance.
Okay. This one kind of sounds like a question that JM might have asked just to make us feel guilty for not having him on the AMA, so he could be here to answer it. Do we envision storage manufacturers running pools themselves, using free space on hard drives that they have sold with their own software pre-installed on the drive to make use of that space until needed?
So partially, yes. It would not surprise us at all that you'll be getting a copy of Chia when you buy a external drive or a NAS or a SAN. And then that copy of Chia in the future will be able to automatically find your free space and farm it on your behalf. Not as clear that the storage manufacturers, as we've kind of talked to them, want to run a pool, but that's where we like having really good pool telemetry for everybody. And what we may very well do is just make it so that you have a little toggle switch.
他说，
I'm feeling
有的这种存储设备制造商可能未来会，你买个什么桌面硬盘里头就会内置有这个Chia的挖矿程序。
And I can tell you that the storage manufacturers are really excited about having that kind of differentiation in their products on the shelf.
Okay. You mentioned a few times a enterprise cat issuance tool. What's it actually meant for? Is there an actual enterprise asking for that solution to solve a particular problem we're trying to solve with it?
Yes. So right now, like you either issue this on the command line or you use the Chives tool. We need to have a far more ready for financial institution tool to be able to do that on a case-by-case basis. So just a shinier, easier to use by IT teams at a bank or at an investment bank.
All right. My favorite space, the developer community. We have a question. Roughly how many teams are building on Chia in stealth right now that we know of? And the answer is if they're in stealth, we don't entirely always know. There are quite a few. I myself personally have had conversations with, I'd say, 24 organizations that have not publicly alluded to anything of folks out there of what's going on. I can't speak to others here, but there's a few, there's quite a few. And that's just community developers, small orgs, that kind of stuff. That's not even speaking to like enterprise partners of ours or other major organizations that are talking to our biz dev team or those other teams as well for much bigger scale stuff. Anything you want to add to that, Gene? Or
yeah, I mean, like I know 2 or 3 that I've spoken to that you don't know about either. So there's that, and also I'll tell you about once a week we are surprised by someone kind of appearing full form in. Wow, they've got a DEX and a wallet, and wow, it's nice. So it's exactly.
他们在说就是目前有多少在开发的项目，这他们所知道的。听他们的意思，好像也不少团队在做不同的项目，他们觉得都还不错。可能这我感觉就是一波一波的吧，后面可能会隔个1个月、2个月又会出现一波应用。
But I also realize that I am nowhere near as smart as some of the people in this call, Bram especially. I can't hold a candle to you, so I didn't want to assume that the answer is an obvious no.
目前主要受限，他们这个东西主要开发生态发展的受限是懂 Chia Lisp 的程序员不多。根据我这段时间开发的感受来讲，就是因为我好多 project 找我，但我没办法，我只能同一时间只能接一个活。
I feel like I beat this one to death in interviews 20 years ago. But
虽然 Chia Lisp 可能2-3天的话就本身的话2-3天就能写好，但是还要写一些其他的驱动代码，而且主要是构思的过程会比较长，真正写代码的时间并不长。
Peer-to-peer storage things, they really aren't going to have good archival
在哪里搬砖？在网上搬砖。
And time, everyone. What are the chances that everyone in a given of everyone who's currently in a given room, one of them will be alive?
其实这个我也有个想法，等我入职的时候再跟他们讲。我觉得可以搞一个应用商店。然后集成到这个钱包里头去。或者以网页的形式。
There are interesting storage and distribution related questions in blockchains, particularly around when you're referencing some external file or some information where there's a needed guarantee of publication that doesn't have quite the same insane level of security requirements.
如果你搞软件开发的话，其实现在我感觉也不能说我发明了吧，但我感觉我找到了一种设计模式，就是 Chia 开发的这应用的一个设计模式，目前感觉还是比较好。
Also, this kind of answers the other question.
他们现在没说啥太重要的东西，就是有一些无关紧要的一些问题。
Information about data and checkpointing that data. That's where data layer comes in. That there are some things that become very interesting to be able to kind of have as not really a layer 2, but is actually a place where data gets exchanged, transferred in a reliable and secure way.
价格你只需要关注一个事情，就是有没有大机构入场就行了，其他的都不重要。
Durable storage we think is an institutional problem, not necessarily a technology problem.
Okay. Two here we'll kind of wrap up and then.
Chia 的爆发必然伴随着一个大型的应用，或者说大的机构去入场。其他这种 C to C 的项目吧，可能会造成一些价格的波动，但是不会特别大。因为现在的币主要是靠炒，它的价格涨跌主要是靠炒，并不是基于应用的。你要想基于应用的去造成价格的 变动，那只能是非常大的量、非常大的资金量才会能造成这个币价的变动。那只有大机构才能做到，散户是做不到。你不可能指望一个应用出来以后，靠散户的这个资金量把这个币价顶上去，那不是一下子，不是靠单个应用可以搞出来的。他们很多都是 to C 的呀，世界银行啊，还有国家政府啊，都是他们潜在客户啊。不是，他们很多的客户都 to B 的呀。
Fair enough. I think that pretty much. We'll close on this question. How many hours of sleep does everyone here on the call get on average?
这个问题挺有意思，有人问这帮人平时每天睡多久。
I am not macho about sleep deprivation. Sleep deprivation is bad for productivity and not something you want to be doing. However, I am a chronic insomniac and I have been completely slammed with work. So I've been struggling to get enough sleep.
那 Bribery 有点失眠。
Usually people can get the sleep they should get finally, which means you get higher quality software and you hopefully have less chance of having 1.3.1.
Jordan, how much sleep were you getting before you joined Chia, and how much sleep are you getting now that you're at Chia?
I guess we'll see the next couple of weeks here.
也不一定，就这点钱，你们还是太低估了大机构了。这点钱，大机构根本不会说是为了省这点钱，然后说我，就是建仓建个几个月，有这几个月的时间，他早点开始这个运行的话，可能本儿都回来了。面试早过了，这个入职都拖了好几个月了，还有1-2个星期入职吧，主要是这个签证手续办得太忙。
When we do an AMA, if we're like, we get asked this question like 20 times and we've never gotten to it, let's just cover it up front before we get started. Maybe we can start doing something.
用不了减产2次以后，减产之前应该就会有，至少有1个，差不多我估计1到2个。
We'll look into ways to finding ways to get more. Also, speaking of Reddit and AMAs, I know we do these live stream AMAs about once every 4 to 6 weeks.
你这前面几期是不是都没看？我怀疑。既然你看看以往几期他们说过啥，他们有2个大的项目在做的。这2个大项目完成的质量，应该才是对币价有决定性影响的东西。其他的这些应用吧，说白了都是生态环境的搭建，这个过程会比较漫长。你先得有了这环境，然后才会有人愿意慢慢的开发一些东西。那个算是一个。
Anyways, thank you everybody for joining us today.
结束了。
And if you had to come in late to this and didn't catch the first half, all this
感觉今天就是讲的比较碎，没有什么太核心的话题，就单纯的答疑，回答了60-70个问题了都。
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Bye, all.
结束了。看看有没有什么有价值的东西。感觉大多数东西都是我知道的。对啊，你就静观其变吧。我觉得至少还得等个1到2年，差不多价格才会有比较明显的这个变化。快的话，说实话我也不知道，这等我入职了进去打探消息吧，我也不知道他们现在开发的进度是啥进度，这眼见为实。等我进去打听，看看到底是什么情况再说。先囤着吧，我现在差不多700个币左右。 然后剩下的就看价格吧，价格如果再往下走的话，可能再收点儿，反正它就越往下走我就越收呗，double down。然后剩下就是正常挖矿，搞点币，然后就是搬砖，然后或者攒点币。我估计流动性矿池应该快出了，我感觉可能就这1到2个月之内吧，应该会有人去搞那个流动性矿池。流动性挖矿，到时候，但是就是这也是有风险的。如果你这些人不靠谱的话，你可能连本金都会损失掉。这个具体到时候再等出了再看吧。我肯定也会稍微研究一下这些有没有靠谱的。毕竟这个很多人手里都是有很多的币囤着，然后没有产生太多的收益。虽然你在这些交易所上面，它会给你1年几% 的这么一个利息，但是说实话太少了。流动性矿池肯定不是官方的，官方不会搞流动性矿池。一般来讲就是比较大的一些项目方吧，可能官方会稍微研究一下他们，然后如果满意的话可能会给个背书之类的，但是一般来讲是官方不会干流动性矿池这种事情，这种事情比较麻烦，就像官方没有挖矿的矿池是一个道理的。这种东西就比较耗精力，你这个运营的话需要耗精力，官方没那个。对，现在流动性矿池很多都不是官方的，也就这些比较靠谱的，也就这些交易所上面的流动性矿池还凑合能相信一下，其他的私人的流动性矿池都比较难。但是就看他有没有，就是如果他是用Chia写好的这些规则的话，就保证这个钱是不会被平台方卷走的话，其实还是可以的。今天没什么大惊喜，基本上都在意料之中。基本上就是一个单纯的一个进度汇报吧，没有什么新的东西出现。主要是这帮人，我感觉他们现在也憋不住事儿了，就是有什么消息他立马发Twitter就说了。所以说感觉就没太多惊喜感了。行吧，先到这里吧。有机会我们再聊。OK， 各位，下次再见，拜拜。